In the slide, it talks about the classification of that security incident in terms of MITRE attack framework. Now, we need to match the tactics and techniques of what were used by the attacker. In this example shown here, we can see that the tactics such as say initial access, discovery, command and control, impact were used. And it also shows a risk score associated with it. Sometimes, depending on how you are calculating the risk score, there is a number associated with it, or risk could be high, medium, low, very critical, dangerous. It depends entirely on what is being used. This is exactly a unified one pane for a particular threat investigator, where the case was created for say a person named Mr. Bill, and let's consider that Mr. Bill was not so smart, and this is the case where the investigation score is say 99. The total findings in that case were 27. Those findings were mapped to the MITRE tactics. Those are the MITRE tactics that are mentioned in below, and then you can see a network graph also. But the most interesting part of this complete thing is what is shown on the right hand side, which is the attack story, a meaningful attack story which can be read by each and everyone. So let's look at this. This is something like a chronological things that happened one after another. Now the story goes like that Mr. Bill, who is not very smart, clicked on an email, and then on that email there was an attachment. He clicked on that attachment, downloaded it, and the attachment also had a ransomware, and the ransomware was installed. So if you want to look at the story of what happened in a technical terms, what happens is a suspicious double extension. So what is a double extension? Usually the extensions to the files that we see are .exe, .pdf, .tar, but some hackers also, what they do is use double extensions just to evade the defense. So the file can be named say abc.exe.tar, and that is being downloaded. So a couple of things that happened because of that is that the initial access and defense evasion, these were the two things that were tagged along. Now, what was the third thing is the credential access. So Bill's credentials were compromised because the ransomware that was installed tried to access something and was able to access the credentials. How can we say that it might have happened? It might have happened because there was a process which was trying to access, or which accessed the memory, that is LSAS memory, and this typically happens when the credential dumping tools work. So similarly, what we can say right now, instead of going in much details, is that the threat investigator gives you a meaningful attack story so that you understand what has happened and take corrective action against it. Thanks. So till now we have looked at many apps. Now the next app that we are looking at is a risk manager. Risk Manager is an indigenous application of CP4S. Risk Manager helps us to get early visibility into a potential security risk. With a single pane on the UI, you do not have to look at different places, or you do not even have to extrapolate results after looking at multiple tools to understand the risk factor of the various entities in your environment. On the right hand side, what we are looking at is a widget which shows the risk of data exfiltration. What it means is that someone in an organization is sending some data in kind of say files, code, secrets, presentations, Excel sheets and whatnot to someone outside the organization. This is unsolicited transfer of data that is happening. If you look at a graph, what you can see is a dark purple line which is showing the number of events that were triggered as a very large outbound transfer. This suggests that something fishy has happened n number of times. More interesting information is also seen on the top right corner of the UI pane. It talks about the total assets, all the threat events seen, and then it also categorizes these risks. One of the categorization we see here is to know how many events have hit our crown jewels. And what are crown jewels? Crown jewel is the most important asset in our environment. It also tells us about the infrastructure components facing the risk exposure. So we have understood the role of risk manager in CP4S is to give a unified view to look at different risks and to know the impact of the same. Now this risk manager app is a free app, but some of the features in this risk manager, like understanding a monetary value of a risk, that what will be the cost if this risk is realized, are covered in a premium subscription. So the risk manager, you can get it free also, but for some features you will have to take a premium subscription. Now let's look at what is threat hunting scramble. On this slide, we'll understand the exact steps that are taken in all organizations when there is a lurking security threat. Remember, there was a vulnerability called Log4Shell, which had affected thousands of products which were using Java JMS library, which was used for logging. What we are seeing here is kind of a flow diagram. Suppose a deadly ransomware, or rather a very critical vulnerability like Log4s has been found in the wild. Now, your company's CEO, CTO, CIO, or for that matter even the CISO are all worried about the impact of this critical vulnerability in your environment. So let's suppose your CIO orders his subordinates to perform threat hunting, that is, to search for anything that matches that particular threat. It may be IP address, hash, file names, etc. So the threat hunters will go ahead and search all the possible data sources and data aggregators to know if anything that is known about the threat exists in your environment. They go ahead and search for the cloud sources, SIEMs like QRadar or ArcSight or Splunk or whatever you have, EDR solutions, and even data warehouse. When they find something, they create a case out of it and attach all the evidences that they have collected along with it. Now, the same case can be accessed by various different people to assess the risk. It will be checked by, say, your IT admins or SOC admins, who will, say, probably block this IP address because this is malicious. It will be even seen by, say, a HR or a legal team, so that they can have a press publish or a press release where they will explain that your organization has not been affected, or if it is affected, how much is the total damage, are the business partners affected, and all that stuff. They also need to ensure that business partners are on the same page as that of the HR and legal. Then there are playbooks, that is a kind of automation that can be designed on this type of threat is found. So if X type of threat is found, please perform these steps like sending email to the director or doing whatever that has been put in automation that is completed. And finally, it also has an access for executives. So your CIOs, CISO will need to understand what exactly happened. And if they understand what exactly happened, they will be in a better position to strategize the next events or strategize the products or their policies, change the policies accordingly. Right. On this slide, what we are looking at is a bird's eye view of what CP4S does. It allows us to have a clear visibility on a complete infrastructure. That it is SIEM of SIEM seems to be very true. So how does it differ from, say, a QRadar? Suppose we had two different QRadar deployments for, say, some political or compliance issues, and we also had a Splunk deployment in another environment. Now the only way to unify all these together and make some sense is by using something like a CP4S. Once we have visibility, CP4S can detect risks and also alerts. For these alerts, further investigation can be done using the apps like Threat Investigator that we have already seen. And then once an automatic response can be used. Overall, if you look at the CP4S, it is a one-shot solution to maintain a good security posture for your environment or for your organization as such. Who does not seem to be very smart gets an email about, say, a purchase order that we had said, without confirming the sender or other details such as if the email was expected or not. Mr. Bill is clicking on the email attachment and then downloads it. Along with that data, malware is also installed. This malware captures Mr. Bill's credentials that he has stored somewhere, and these credentials are now on the wire or are on the darknet. Now, Bill's credentials can be used to access very important, say, databases like Oracle database, which is very critical for that company. When such incidents happen, the SOC analyst finds out that someone else is using, say, Bill's credential rather than Bill himself. There is a lot of stuff that SOC analyst or his team will have to go through. He will have to search on all the security platforms that he has or is being used by the organization and understand if there are any artifacts or what damage or what assets have been affected. Here, if we had CP4S in one single pane, we can show him what all with evidence of what all assets are affected, and even an automated response can be sent in such cases. This saves the SOC analyst so much time and effort. So on the slide, what you see is the actual single UI pane that we were talking about throughout this presentation. What you can see is that the SOC analyst has designed this dashboard. It is a customized dashboard for that particular SOC analyst, and he can even share that. Now, what we can see is a world map, which is showcasing how the offenses or malicious connections are propagating. So if you have worked on, say, QRadar, you must have seen a Pulse dashboard with a globe where similar things happen. It also shows us the log sources which are sending logs, the open cases and their conditions. Such an interface with so many applications which are handy and makes the investigations very efficient in terms of, say, time and even the number of people that need to check this. You can see that every log source details and data is being collected by them. So if something is missing, then also some alerts can be sent. And so to conclude, the philosophy of security, as with life, is to keep things very, very simple. And this is exactly what CP4S is doing for us. In a single pane window, you can detect, investigate, and report the threats in a very unified way.